Totally timing myself on this one. All right, I do have to ask before I get going, how many Muppet fans do we actually have out here tonight? That makes me very happy. Thank you. So the rise, the fall, and the in-progress resurrection of the Muppets really all comes down to character. One thing that Jim Henson understood very much, just as Walt Disney had known it before him, and just as John Lasseter and the gang at Pixar understand it right now, is that character is king. And when you have great characters, you're able to tell great stories. And more so than that, the characters often write the story for you. When you have great characters, they often lead the way. You know, you don't have to shoehorn situations because the characters dictate where you're going. Jim understood this, and when he was creating The Muppet Show, especially in the early seasons, you could see how he was constructing these characters. Very specifically, he was working with his Muppeteers on finding the right combination of characters to form a true family unit. And that's when the rise of the Muppets really began. When we got to know these characters, they weren't puppets. They were Kermit, they were Gonzo, they were Fozzie, they were Piggy. They were true characters that we learned to really love. And they all acted together in a very particular way. And we got to know that through all of the TV shows, the movies. They made appearances. They hosted Nightline at one point. They're able to do this because we know them as characters and we love them as characters. We know they spend Christmases together. They go on camping trips with John Denver. So the thing about the Muppets that during the rise was that they got so popular because we really cared about them and we understood them. The fall sadly began when Jim Henson actually died. He and a fellow Muppeteer, Richard Hunt, died. And when that happened, for whatever reason, they decided to bench a lot of the characters. Obviously, they kept Jim's Kermit, but a lot of the additional characters got sidelined. They got benched. And they would just be seen in the background of different things. And whether we were conscious of it or not, it did affect what we were seeing of these characters, because we knew that if it was a Muppet production, they had a group of performers that should be involved. And the best example I can share of this is in the 90s, they had a show called Muppets Tonight on ABC. It was their new version of The Muppet Show. It was a decent show. It was a close but not quite there show. They got back to adult humor. They tried to do similar things to match the tone, but what was off was they didn't use the core characters that we had grown to love. It was hosted by a character named Clifford, which was introduced in the 90s, and that's fine. They were going for sort of an Arsenio Hall-ish type setup with this series. But the example that I have of where they were wrong in their decisions was the show featured a house band. They played the theme song to the show. They played different musical bits during the show. But the house band never spoke. So why not use Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem as the house band? Just because Jim Henson and Richard Hunt, who did Dr. Teeth and Janice, weren't with us anymore, we still knew the characters. Why not use them even if the characters weren't going to talk? Animal showed up on the show and would hang out backstage during the show. Again, as a character, it makes no sense because even though he's a part of the larger Muppet family, he's first and foremost a member of the Electric Mayhem. He's a part of their family. So if the Mayhem's not there because they're off gigging somewhere and performing at a bar or a polka, which we've seen them do, if they're off doing that, Animal should be with them, not hanging out backstage at a Muppet Show. So these are the little things, character-wise, that for whatever reason, they just didn't do. And it was noticeable. We knew that something was off with these characters, and it didn't play right. And so there was a very long period where the Muppet characters that we knew weren't working, and they were off on even the types of stories they were telling. They were trying to kidify the Muppets, and the Muppets were always very adult. They started out as an adult show as a counter to Sesame Street, which Sesame Street was specifically for kids, and Jim worried that overall adults were going to start looking at puppets as an art form as child's things, and that's not the case. So he created The Muppet Show as a counter to show that this is a viable adult entertainment form. So they started focusing back on adults, but they didn't have the characters right. So now, finally, yes, me and Beaky. So now, finally, the resurrection of the Muppets are in play. Over the last several years, they have been putting out web videos, and some of them have been brilliant. The best example of what they have been doing is, if you've seen it, Muppets Bohemian Rhapsody. If you've not seen it, go home, Google this sucker, Muppets Bohemian Rhapsody. It is the classic Queen song, but it is Muppetized, and the use of the Muppet characters is perfect. They have finally re-embraced the characters that we know. They have come back to the idea that they all fit a very specific place within this family of characters. Most specifically, again, the Electric Mayhem, when they're featured, they have very self-referential lyrics. They've changed the lyrics to the song slightly. And that is something that they always did. This is the group that they lifted up the script to the Muppet movie during the movie to see where they were in the film. They've always been very meta. They went back to that again. It was great to see. And we also have a new movie that's being produced for this November. Jason Segel of How I Met Your Mother, Forgetting Sarah Marshall, Freaks and Geeks. He's starring in it. He's writing it. And a couple of the guys from Flight of the Conchords are involved as well, directing and doing music. So it all points to the Muppets as we got to know them, as we got to love them, are finally coming back in a very big way. I, for one, am very excited. I hope that you Muppet fans are too. And I hope you enjoyed the very small little Muppet Show. That's my timer telling me that I'm done talking, but the little mini Muppet Show that was at play here. And this was all character-based, how they would probably do it. So thank you very much, and Muppet babies. Yeah.